Okay, so this chapter is called Submittals and Governing Documents. So, as I was just saying at the end of the last chapter, you are likely very familiar with the submittal process. Okay, great. The same thing goes for a keying system that you're going to deliver. It's icky to have cylinders not working the way that they should or are supposed to. It's hard to solve that because you can't just take your pin kit and run out to the job and start pinning up locks. It's hard to solve that problem. We want to get it right the first time. The submittal process obviously allows us to all be on, as I said earlier, the same page, same sheet of music. So there are three primary documents that are included in a submittal set for a key system, and that's going to be your cover page, that's going to be your keying schedule, and that's going to be your key schematic. And the cover page is the same document that you're already familiar with. When you do a submittal set, when I do one, it's the project, it's the owner, it's the architect, it's the engineer, it's the contractor, it's the distributor. Addresses, names, emails, cell numbers. And I give it a document. I give it a version number, let's say. Oh, according to your submittal version 1.0, need to be able to reference something like you do on an architectural set of plans. Revision date this, sheet this. Okay. So the cover page, we're going to go over it when we hit the chapter, but you're already familiar with it. The next is the key schematic. We've gone over those. That's that vertical, well, they were shown horizontally. Geometric shapes that are tied together with lines so that anyone can really understand where keys are nested under different keys. And then the keying schedule. That's a neat little document in the sense that it's got, my example has 4 columns, and in fact, it may not need 4 columns. I like to have it there. I like to have all 4, meaning door number, the room description, the lock type or the cylinder type, the part number of the thing that's going to get keyed, and then the keying, meaning the standard key coding system. And everything that gets keyed up is going to be on there, so you can quickly refer to it and say what key should work that door, and then you've got it. Now, obviously, when you're doing submittals, they'll have the key set. When you're doing a submittal, you'll have the key set there. But we're talking about creating submittals just for a keying system. Can this information piggyback into your other submittals? I don't see how, because you've not had the keying conference yet. You've not, you've been awarded the job, and you're working on submittals, but you may not have that built in. If you have the ability to tie it all together, those are just going to be additional sheets in your master set, would be how I would do it. So again, cover page, key schematic, keying schedule. Let's switch now and get to the chapter and get through it. Let's get into reading the chapter on submittals and governing documents. Those documents that are at the heart of how the locksmith or key consultant conveys their conclusions are called the submittal documents. Submittal set are just submittals, as you're familiar with. Coming from the door and hardware industry, you are likely very familiar with these, either having made them, reviewed them, corrected them, and even had people try to get you to make them for free when they have no intention of sending you the order, etc. Had someone call me a month ago. Yeah, I'm going to send you the PO. I just need to get the submittals for approval. Needle scratch. Yeah, if time was infinite, sure, I would happily do it. These documents, just like other submittals we spend our careers working on, are akin to what you're already familiar with. If you are preparing a key submittal set, you will need information. And that information comes from some of the construction documents you either are already in possession of or you will need to obtain them. So what documents do you need to have access to and in order to create your submittal set? Let's take a closer look. Section 08 7100 or just 8700 as we would have called it back. The architectural drawings of a plan set, those sheets will start with the letter A, right? These are the sheets that start with the letter A, and specifically the floor plan and door schedule and the key documents mentioned below. And the key documents mean the documents that are going to be the cornerstone of those documents that you refer to. I do not think you will need elevations or wall sections, but having them at your disposal may prove useful. If you've got an unusual door and you need to know what side something's going to happen on. There's an example that I gave previously about a very unusual Dutch door for the military, and I needed to know how that was going to swing. And I needed to know the intended position of something, and this having the elevation was handy. Elevations or wall sections. Opening number references. You obviously need to know what the drawings are calling the openings. The architectural drawings are to include the openings shown on the floor plan with door tag or door number or opening number, however it's referred to. These door numbers are how people will know what openings you are referring to. Door schedule. The door schedule is a list of what is to be supplied on the project. You will include references to the door and frame type, other details pertaining to the door and frame, but you will also include a hardware set reference. What I mean to say is the door schedule will include references to the door and frame type and other details pertaining to the door and frame, but will also include a hardware set reference. Usually does. Along with any special notes that relate to your scope of the project, you will pull your requirements from the hardware sets. That note field that's on the far right column of a door schedule is a place architects like to pin requirements that may show up nowhere else. An example of this may be a keyed cabinet lock. I dread those kitchen sink sort of areas where things just get piled onto that you've got to go over. Sometimes I'll go through something and work it up and then kind of dread to go back and reread that because I know I glossed over it too quickly. Floor plan. You possibly need the floor plan and door schedule to help you determine what part number specific products you need to detail. Perhaps you are to provide a Brinks or hotel function cylinder and need to know the hand of the door to correctly specify your hardware components. Detention locks are always handed. You could be on a project where you need to have a lock that is from our Brink or some Southern Folger. I've sold that material to people. The Customs and Border Patrol has bought that material from us. It's always, it's just ridiculously heavy-duty hardware, but you need to know everything about it. Door elevations. It is tedious work, but very helpful to clarify concerns when you can look at the door elevations. In this, maybe I didn't previously talk about this Dutch door, but here we go. You might have a 90-minute fire-rated Dutch door that you need to provide locks or cylinders for. And we all know, if you're in the door business, that fire-rated and Dutch doors are pretty uncommon, just because everything that you have to do to it to make it compliant, it's kind of not a Dutch door anymore, in the sense that it just doesn't behave, like a coat check Dutch door. Or a Dutch door in a high school where someone on the inside of the room is selling, the gym uniforms, and it's going to be open on Wednesday between 1 and 1:45. That kind of stuff. You're not really thinking that. You have a 90-minute Dutch door. you need to provide locks or cylinders for. The door schedule may call out a door as a Dutch door, but does not indicate what side the door the shelf is attached to. Why is this important? Well, it is important. You want to call out conflicts you discover immediately. In this fire-rated Dutch door example, you see the shelf is intended to be on one side only of a reverse bevel door. As you may know, the top leaf needs to latch to either the jamb or the lower leaf, but on this project, the top leaf will latch into the lower leaf. With the shelf on the pull side, and assuming it will be installed flush with the top of the lower leaf, the top of the lower leaf must be prepped for a strike. So you've got an upper leaf and a lower leaf. That upper leaf is going to latch into the top rail of the bottom leaf. Well, the conflict is you've got a shelf there. Okay, you're going to have a latch bolt that's going to be dragging across a shelf. At this point, there's a conflict between the required strike and the location of the shelf, as the deadlocking latch bolt from the slam latch will drag across the top of the shelf. And just as an aside, you might be saying, well, what slam latch is fire rated? I sent the order to the factory and told them to make it for a B250, and because I was just, going quickly through it, meaning they're not going to, I want it for a B250. I want a 2 1/8 hole, even though that can go to 2.5 inches, etc. Well, the smarty pants at the factory reached out and said, I'm not going to be able to do this for you. That latch bolt, that slam lock you got's not fire rated. Well, Marks makes a version of that is fire rated, and I let him know I apologize. I didn't think that you were. I didn't know the part number off the top of my head for the Marks, because I hadn't ordered it yet, even though I knew that it existed. So I just rattled off the top, that B250 off my right, at the top of my mind, because I have it memorized. So I needed to provide the actual Marks part number. They have a fire rated version. So there's a conflict between the strike and the position of the shelf. Reviewing the door elevation will help you understand the intent of the owner through the finalized drawings provided to you. Why should this matter to you if you're only providing a lock with the required key symbol work? It's because I find getting paid is easier when there are less mistakes that I am directly, indirectly, or even remotely related to. Finding these odd errors, and they do occur, and they occur because, us door people like to deride architects, but at the end of the day, they're really doing so many jobs. And that's why consultants exist, because the architect is not, in my opinion, their role is to not be expert, to know, how many wires you need to run a Von Duprin checkset device in an EPT. That's not for them to know, in my opinion. So pointing out these odd errors is a good idea. A quick example of this would be a project from the recent past. Door tag, this is a different project. Door tag 04 is an existing 210-70 90-minute wood door, steel frame, and an overhead concealed closer. The client wants a new door for opening 04 along with the 10 other doors on the job. So they want a new door for 04, and there were 10 other doors. Because 04 is a 210 and not compliant with the minimum required clear opening with a 32-inch, this happened to be, primary access to get into this retail space, or this commercial space. And it wouldn't be compliant with the 32-inch minimum clear opening. And coincidentally, there also wasn't a compliant ramp. This required a ramp, and they had like a 3-inch, wedge something or other specified from a manufacturer that I'd never heard of. You can show your expertise by offering swing clear hinges to possibly salvage the door, but you have an existing overhead closer you need to consider. Though before you suggest this option, you need to learn You need to learn the client wants a specific type and possibly the frame is damaged. Let's take a closer look. Okay, I was just reading that clumsily. You can show your expertise by offering swing clear hinges to possibly salvage the door, but you have an existing overhead closer. By the way, they want to reuse the frame and the overhead closer. They only want a new door. But you have an existing overhead closer you need to consider, though before you suggest this option, you learn the client wants a specific door type and possibly the frame is damaged. They've told you that there might be damage, that they may replace it. The door schedule calls out in the notes to reuse the overhead closer. I am supplying the door and frame, so naturally I need to know what closer I'm prepping for. I ask the project manager to send over photos, and you discover you have a non-ADA compliant closer. Well, they sent over, it was an LCN, I don't remember, a 2034, something like that. You can do what your scope requires, or you can do your job. The correct way is to bring this to your client's attention. And if you are like me, you are good at reliable and dependable service, but you don't do low bidder as well. Your expertise is why they hired you in the first place. If you are not going to do the race to the bottom and be the low bidder, you better be doing the high caliber professional expert type work. Also, that turned into new everything. New door, new 3.0 door, new overhead concealed closer, new frame, even a new lock that they were going to reuse. And it's all because you pointed out through doing a key submittal that you recognize these other problems with the opening. So keying a lock became replacing everything, a few $1,000s. This door was 90-minute, full glass. Okay, now you're thinking dollar signs. Addenda. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're aware of any addenda that are out there. Are you working with all the current information? The architect will issue addendums to update the construction document package when required. There are dozens of sections in the specification set, and it is just as likely that facade finishes are in the addenda as components related to locksmithing, but you must be sure. Working with old data will wrinkle the nose of all parties involved and most certainly cost you money. Okay. I guess what I'm driving at is there could be something tucked in there that relates to something that touches the work you do. Maybe a finish is conflicting, I think is what I'm driving at there. Once you have assembled the required base documents, you are ready to begin the process of creating the submittal set. The following in bold will highlight the required components to building a successful submittal set for the locksmithing portion of the work. The keying submittal set will prove substantially smaller, yet equally as vital components to the construction document process. Starting in order in which the documents would occur, let's take a closer look. Okay, so cover page. As I had said earlier, you're familiar with this. This document is just as it's called. This is the top page of your submittal set and will include the following components: a document number, so everyone can say, I'm working on version so-and-so. This will be a unique identifier, such as your job number, that others and yourself will be able to refer to when referencing your submittal set. Project name, this is self-explanatory. I like to include the profile information of the owner, the architect, general contractor, and the supplier, distributor, key consultant. Be sure to include the primary contact name, email, and cell number for each of the above when appropriate. Date, make sure you document. Make sure you date the document, obviously. Reference material, be sure to indicate what drawings your work is based on. That will allow you to declare, hey, I'm working on this information. Document length. And back to reference material, I've had really nice contractors or architects look at my stuff and say, oh, yeah, there was a revision and no one bothered to tell you. So, once in a while you'll have a great guy that says, or gal that says, yeah, I got to get you that new stuff. Let's see if there's any impact. Document length. Be sure to indicate how many pages long your submittal is. I have not included a cover page as it's too simple, meaning there is no cover page listed here to show you an example of. It's a blank sheet of paper and you've written that stuff on there. If you want to center it, you want to bold, increase the font in some areas, great. Have at it. And like I said earlier, I like to put names, phone numbers, and emails. On the submittal set, I like people to be able to communicate or know how to reach someone so as to be inclusive. Key schematic, we've gone over that in detail. This document type was introduced earlier as a tool to help explain keying levels. Keying schematics will not be discussed again here except to say this. The keying schematic is the visual representation utilizing geometric shapes, lines, and arrowheads, allowing someone to visually review the topography of a key system. These schematics can be drawn horizontally as shown in the ANSI standard, or in a vertical format so as to conserve space in larger systems. Please feel free to review the section above on keying schematics. In the interest of continuity, a simple two-level keying schedule. Keying is a keying schematic might look like this. Very simple. And I think vertically is how you're going to want to, unless it's a really small system, you're going to probably want to draw it vertically because you can still maintain the size of your stuff here rather than doing it horizontally where it can get quite small. If you refer back to my level 4 horizontal key schematic, you really got to zoom in. You'll get complaints from people if they've got to click twice. Keying schedule. This is my favorite document. This document is a list, just like the door schedule from the architectural section of the plans that you're already familiar with, except it's not, beleaguered with all this other stuff that you don't need to know, fire rating and whatnot. This is a document the keying consultant creates, and a simple two-level keying schedule might look like this. Columns, door number, room description, hardware, and the standard key coding symbol is here as well. I'm just using cylinder numbers here or lock numbers here. So lobby, obviously this is a mortise cylinder. We've got a privacy set here, not applicable. We've got a storeroom lock, etc. You get the concept of what's happening here. That's how I do it. Now you might say, well, do I need to put door 101 there? You don't, and that's a personal preference because this is a keying schedule. But I'm always the type that is going back to check, did I miss that? So I just list it there so that, for me personally, I don't need to worry about missing a door. Are all the doors here? And I think when I've had other people review this and I've witnessed them review it, I think other people too appreciate the approach of having it listed and just knowing, that doesn't apply, but I'm comforted that it's there. So proceed however you feel, that's important to you. You will note the 4 columns left to right are door number, room description, hardware installed, and finally the SKCS. I acknowledge those entries on the keying schedule that do not take keys or lock sets. I like to list every door and list every component of the hardware set that pertains or is related to a lock cylinder. I do this to allow myself to double check my work and to ensure I have not missed any doors. I don't like that worried feeling of wondering, did I miss it? It is possibly helpful to others to see what is happening on those doors that are currently scheduled for hardware outside the key system. Perhaps a door needs to be added or even removed from the keying system. Happens all the time. So what I'm referring to is instances where I've had someone look at it and say, oh, we have a privacy. What's this? What function is that? Why is there no key symbol there? Well, that's because that's a privacy set. You know what? We weren't sure what we wanted to do about that. Well, now we are. Let's put a keyed lock on there. So I've seen that happen. Obviously, floor plan is something that you've got to have. Well, forgive me, maybe it's not obvious. I include a floor plan in the sense that I include a floor plan when I'm reviewing my process of making the required documents. A floor plan is not required necessarily, but you need to be able to refer to it. Here's a generic floor plan I found online. I think this is for a medical clinic in Spain that I could load into AutoCAD and then delete out what I didn't need. Anyway, floor plan. The floor plan needs no explanation. Though the above floor plan might look like this, tough to see, so here's a link. I mean, if you, well, here, okay. There's a link. If you wanted to see what that looked like. Not that you would, but nonetheless. Once you receive the submittal back, assuming it is approved, you are released. You are released unless the contract or external mitigating factors dictate otherwise, as if, you know, that needs any explanation. Like maybe they didn't pay you for the last job and they're, you know, way out, you know, etc. So you're released to order materials and execute your scope of the work. If it is not approved, you may or may not need to submit. You make any corrections, additions, or subtractions needed, obtain pricing, change order approvals, or deductions which are to be executed with your client, submit if required, otherwise move to execution. And that's all there is to it. So the three primary documents: cover page, key schematic, key schedule. Okay? That's what you're working on. All right, let's wrap up this video on camera. So in writing this relatively short chapter, I was considering making a complete fictitious key submittal package. But I thought, well, I'll just define what it is, and I'll show examples where it's necessary. The key schematic, the keying schedule, you know, cover page, you know what that looks like. The only thing that, you know, if you're going to make a keying submittal set, the only thing that you might need help with would be the fact that you may not live and breathe the standard key coding system every day. You might not be sure how to call something out. You might need to lean on the experience of someone that would be more expert in it. Other than that, you know, there's not really a lot else to say about this. So, in the spirit of not saying anything else about this, the next chapter is how to transmit secure information to your client. Not much to talk about there, but the chapter after that is going to prove to be probably the largest chapter overall, and will end up being the largest, the last really big chunk to get through. Everything else will be smaller doses. So let's move on to how to securely transmit information to your client.